Join us today as we talk about automation and is it stealing your job? Or is it actually creating new opportunities? We're going to jump in, we're going to explore the future of work and how we need to reskill to prepare for the world tomorrow.
All right, Tony, how you doing, man? Good to have you back.
Good, man. Good. I'm back in the saddle. I'm not on assignment anymore.
Two
back.
long weeks without you.
I know. I heard the doves crying. It's okay. It's okay. I'm back.
Awesome.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about, the future of automation, aka AI, and how that is going to reshape our world. And I think we're going to focus more on like jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to factor in a lot of different areas, right? But let's talk about like how are jobs, and we've talked about this, like, this is just going to evolve into a Terminator movie, right? If you've been listening to us, we've talked about this. This is the blanket statement, like they're just going to overthink us and take us over, right? Just like Terminator. But here's the thing. So as AI is coming into a fold, it's still in its infancy. So could we be 3 months, 3 months, 3 years, 30 more years away from AI completely taking over everything? Things are moving very fast, and that's just technology today. But, I want to focus on how is it affecting jobs? Like, what jobs are being lost? What jobs are being gained? And then some wild cards, right? Like, because I believe Goldman Sachs came out and said that, AI could easily displace 300 million jobs or 25% of the global workforce in the next, 10-ish years, plus or minus. But then I saw that the World Economic Forum said it can create 100 million jobs. So this is all true. So let's talk about like the impact on jobs. Let's talk about the displacement. When I start thinking about the jobs that could be lost and I struggle with this, but like think about some of the white collar jobs. I'm going to start there, not even the blue collar jobs, because like, I was driving down the street today and I saw like a new house and I'm like, man, when's AI going to take over? I literally thought about that because I was thinking about this episode as I was driving in, and I'm like, how are they going to do that? Because I mean, you see these houses being built out of like, like mortar, because you get the, like these 3D printed houses, and they're like 1,000 square foot, and they're like layers of concrete, and that's it. How long are those going to last? Like having a hard time seeing a robot coming in and, laying blocks and pouring concrete and leveling it and putting the electrical in and putting the plumbing in and putting up cabinets. Like, can they help a person and maybe displace 1 or 2 people doing that? Maybe, but not right now. So I actually feel like as much as blue collar work could be like the specialized blue collar work, I think is safe. Because we have to build data centers to power the AI. So therefore, electricians, plumbers, construction people, like those are going to be in demand for the next decade. But I take a look at white collar jobs like taxes. I don't know. I mean, some people have an easy tax return, and I could see it. It takes people 5, 10, 20 minutes sometimes because they got a W-2 and that's it. There's nothing else going on. But then you get a business owner who's got write-offs and different tax rates and all this different stuff for their business, their personal. And so, I don't know. There's that. We had that episode, like, can financial advisors be taken over with that? And I said, well, my biggest, again, I'm more of a doomsday person. I'm like, what if they just swing the market in a direction and all the money goes to one person or one entity or something? How do you get that back? How do you hit the rewind button?
It's a real issue.
Yeah. And then doctors. Well, I think AI is helping, you can see that today. They're helping diagnose people very very quickly. But, can a robot go in and precisely open somebody up and make a decision, because I'm pretty sure if I'm in surgery and they're operating on my heart and your heart, not everything's the same in there. That's what I'm going to say, right? So what are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit on a bunch there. Just as you mentioned, houses and white collar job. I mean, what about like architects? Like what's like that seems to be closer, where you could just say, hey, go to Pulte's website and, I like this aspect of this house and that aspect of this house, design me a 3,000 square foot house with a finished basement to fit on this piece of land. And I think in relatively short order, I think it's going to be able to do that.
Yeah. Like, hey, and I want a mini bar over here.
Exactly.
I want the fridge over here. And I bet you within a couple minutes, they're going to refigure the kitchen for you.
Yep.
Right.
I was actually, this is a little off topic, but, you said we're going to devolve into Terminator pretty quick, so we might as well just get there right now. But they were talking about the Neuralink, and, basically, it was your boy Tucker Carlson. He had a guest on. And he was saying, if you can implant a Neuralink into someone, who's to say that you couldn't like project like false images into their mind,
Yeah.
basically controlling their mind. And that's just one step away from Skynet, right? Because if that chip gets hooked up to the internet, like that's Skynet right there.
Yeah.
So it's it is definitely a slippery slope. I could easily see, taxes are always going to be complicated, it seems. There's more tax talk right now.
Well, like, think about engineers. And we were talking to our engineer before this, it's like, hey, what happened, 70 years ago when we actually didn't have plows, right? Plowing fields that displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Right? Or maybe thousands of people. I don't know. Now we just have a tractor and it runs all day and it does the work of 50 people. Right. In hours. Mm-hmm. Engineering. As I was coming up through engineering, like I learned how to construct a building, and it's very complicated. And when they built like the Empire State Building, there were no computers.
Right.
So you literally had 3 to 4 floors of hundreds of engineers on each floor doing calculations to build that building.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in school, like, I learned that way, and it's not fun. It's complicated. And now they make engineering software where 2 people can probably design the same building in a week.
Yep.
Right? Where it took, I don't know, like 3 years to develop to create the Empire State Building with hundreds of engineers. But we've made it through that, right? So,
that's the thing, it's when you talk about, reskilling, the entire population, this is just kind of what happens through time. It's the old buggy whip arguments, right? You don't need buggy whip manufacturers anymore. There's probably a dozen of those sold every year. Just look at the difference in the world between, like when we were growing up, like as kids, say like the early 90s, there was no internet. There was
pagers were a big thing. Pagers exactly. And then a flip phone, and then it took off from there.
So, even back then, there was so much more manufacturing, even still in the early 90s, than we have now. So, we adapt. Humans adapt to the environment. It is definitely going to require a shifting of the skilled workers, I think, but at the same time, it should also provide benefits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about some of the jobs that are gained, right? So, AI engineers, like people that I don't think we can have the computers build the computers. That'd be bad, mm-hmm. right? But you have to have people to create the computers. You need people to create the data centers.
Yep.
Again, unless we can create robots that are fully functional and that can put up rebar and pour concrete and maybe they do exist and I just don't know about it,
mm-hmm.
right? But these are some of the things that, like, it takes a human mind to work around different situations. Because I've been on construction sites before when I was co-oping as an engineer, and things pop up, man. Things don't really go to plan usually on a construction site. Things need to be quickly dealt with, and you move on, right? And you build around it, or you reconfigure. The data centers, building that stuff, like the electricians and the plumbers, and those are hard, technical skills, right? To building all of that. I do like your take on the architect, though. Like, that does seem like something that, I think I have an app now. I can take a picture of this room and look, and it can tell me what the room looks like with a picture and a different color wall. Yep. Right? So, but also, like, what about AI ethic officer? Again, how far are we going to let a robot take over? Yeah. Right? Who's going to be there as the checks and balance? And it's got to be a human saying, hey, this don't look right, or or we should be concerned about how this thing's evolving, right? Yep. So, but and then kind of, is there any jobs that you think could pop out of that? Out of like the AI ethics officer specifically? Well, no, not that one. Just like any other. I kind of named like 3 jobs that are kind of either going to be there or safe in this environment. Yep. So it's not going to run itself. So, I always thought of, because a long time ago I worked for like a packaging company, and it got to go in some of these huge automation facilities like the Amazons of the world, and just the technology change in, the 3 or 4 years that I was there. It was remarkable. It went from, a bunch of people, manually packing boxes to, a fully automated system where, everything was picked, filled, taped up, and shipped out. The throughput would go up, 50x just by installing the automation. But, you talk about white collar jobs, that at that time, that machinery went down, not often, but, enough where you needed a full-time person to be able to run the system. You obviously have to train people who are working on the line. So it's just more of a kind of a shifting of skills versus, and to that point, it's fairly exciting, right? You don't just have humans just mindlessly, packing boxes, right? You have skilled employees. So yeah. Well, think about like the wild cards on this. That's kind of where my mind was going with some of this, is that we do have an aging population that is exiting the workforce, and it's actually going to be difficult to replace them right now. Yep. So I think that eats into that number of, everyone being displaced. Like, we're actually being displaced because, and actually, I don't know if it's a displacement. I don't know how to really word it, but like, if people are exiting and no one's coming in, like, there's voids. So maybe AI is needed. I'm going to try and be positive on this segment. All right. So maybe AI is needed because of our aging population leaving and exiting the workforce. That's one thing. We were talking about displacement. I'll just use that example of, we had 100 people plowing a field 70 years ago or whatever, and now a tractor and 3 tractors and 3 operators in those tractors now take care of those 150 to 100 people. Yep. But those what did those other 50 people go and do? They went and did something else. So maybe it's something where, AI, the people that work in AI do make a lot of money, and they're going to need help doing that. And maybe that is sort of the funnel of new revenue sources. And the people that are displaced are now maybe just making the world better, because maybe they're, opening more restaurants or opening more entertainment. Maybe you could even take a look and call AI deflationary. Right? Help bring down the cost of things so that everything's not as expensive. I know deflation is normally is bad for the economy, but maybe it won't be in this realm. Like, we can't just have things things have gone up historically forever, but if things are done more quickly, more efficiently, maybe there is a positive for the deflationary type of thing. But again, we need people to work so that they can buy things, right? So I don't know how this evolution of displacement is really going to play out, but I'm sure it will open an area that you and I, or even the internet, can't even think of right now.
Yep. It really is. You quickly move to a philosophical debate here, right? Because who's to say that this is what we're meant to do, right? Everyone basically working, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. It could, AI and the technological advances associated with it could lead to a better society, right? Maybe people work 30 hours a week instead of 40 to 50. You can see the
better work-life balance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where I was kind of going with like the displacement, like if people are either being displaced permanently or partially, like, everyone's all, burnt out and work too much and all this stuff, like maybe that helps.
For sure.
The mental psyche of everybody, maybe.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that's already, made, taking care of your kids easier, or, cleaning your house easier. Like, I haven't vacuumed my floor in, 7 years now. I've had those iRobot vacuum cleaners, and now
Zumbas. What are they called?
Roomba.
Yeah.
Roomba. Zumba was the exercise class from the 90s. The most recent one that I got is ridiculous. It's a mop and a vacuum in one. It works perfectly. And you can control it from your phone. You just say, hey, and it maps your whole house. So you can say, hey, my kids made a mess under the kitchen table. It goes right over there, vacuums up, and then it mops, and then it goes home, and then it empties its bin. Just in the difference between that one and the first iRobot that I had that would just basically bounce around between the walls, it's crazy. You just start to do the math on that stuff, and you get to a pretty crazy place pretty quick. The AI videos, right? It seems like AI videos have been out for a short time, maybe like under 2 years in the mainstream. And I just saw yesterday actually some of the new AI videos. I think it was from Google. It's basically indistinguishable now. In 5 years, it will definitely be indistinguishable. There's going to be a big problem.
You see like a human being and they just look real.
Yeah, like an AI video looks completely real. And that's just, since we've seen them in the last couple of years. What's that going to look like in 5-10 years, So in what jobs will that replace, and what jobs will that create? Right. If you've seen a shift, right? A lot of people don't watch TV anymore. They just watch YouTube. They watch podcasts,
I don't even know if I've never been a big movie goer, but I don't think many people go to the movies anymore. They don't even make movies that often anymore. No. There's not 3 or 4 or 5 different movies being created every week. The new movie's coming out this week. Like, new movie's coming out this month. Great. Like, one's coming out this month. Let's go watch it, right? I don't know. It's just, again, there's been a cultural shift after COVID, and AI is starting to really develop, and it'll be interesting to watch. But at this point, like, I think as an investor, kind of bringing us back into like investing and stuff, like, the chips is the engine, and who's making the chips, and how are they integrating the chips? So you got the Microsofts of the world who are integrating the chips, but then you got the manufacturers like AMD and NVIDIA, Taiwan Semi. Those people, those companies are, they're creating the actual hardware. And then you get like the Googles and the Microsofts who are implementing, the software side of it.
Yep.
So that's the best way to play it now, because there's no firm that's out there doing AI ethics officer, not yet, but that makes a lot of sense, hey, somebody watch this robot so it doesn't destroy us.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like college football right now. It's the Wild West out there. Not many rules, not many people enforcing them. So
Yeah.
we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, take us home.
Yeah, well, good stuff this week. If you guys have any questions, comments, show ideas, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.